Good morning. The June 22nd Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. I've neglected to mention that Dr. Frank is out of town today, so he will not be able to join us. Item 2.04 is establish agenda order, and the agenda stands as published.
No,
it doesn't.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Nally.
I move that agenda item 4.05, terms of employment for Unit 3 employees for FY 2017, be changed to ratification of the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Association of Federal, State, and Municipal Employees.
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Item 2.05 are recognitions, and we have a few recognitions today. The first one is for our beloved board member, Miss Allison Pickard. You're first today. Allison, from the moment you reached out to ask what it was like to be a board member, I knew I had found a kindred spirit. You're intelligent, you're strong, you're analytical, and you're passionate. You push us to think out of the box and to consider all points of view before making a decision. You're a true public servant and a role model for women of all ages. And you have more than honored your commitment to this board by being present and hardworking from day one. Although one door is closing, a true public servant is always ready, willing, and able to walk through the next door. I know you have many doors from which to choose right now, and I'm looking forward to watching what this next phase of life will bring your way. Thank you for a fantastic year. I'll treasure it always. Mrs. Birch.
Thank you. Allison, it's been a privilege to work with you over the last year. You've been a tenacious board member, a tireless advocate for the children in our county, a wonderful colleague, and a fantastic friend. I appreciate every moment of your tenure here on the board, and as well as I know my colleagues do. I'll miss your smiling face and your witty commentary. I'll miss you on the dais, but I know that we will continue to see you as you begin your tenure as the new president of the County Council of PTAs. And I know that you will continue your tireless advocacy for the children of our county there, and I wish you the best of luck. And we will miss you, but I know we will still see you very often. Good luck.
Mrs. Nally.
I echo the comments of my colleagues. It has been really wonderful to work with you. In my 9 years experience, I have not known a board member to be a member for the length of time you have and to accomplish so much. I think that you have been almost at every school, at every event. You have really contributed a lot to our board, and you will be missed.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to again echo the thanks of the other board members, but also to especially echo what Mrs. Nally has said. I don't know that anyone who's been on this board for such a short period of time has made such an impact and a footprint that's lasting, not just for this board, but for the school system. And for that, I thank you. I also want to especially thank you for helping me coming on the board and giving me some welcoming advice, not just as service as a board member, but also as a new parent. I value that greatly and appreciate all that you have done to help me. I look forward to what's in your future and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Mrs. Summer.
broken record. We're all saying the same things. We first met when we were both interviewing before the nominating commission due, and we synced right away because we have the same background in children, and so it has been wonderful to have you be my new partner in crime this past year as we've learned together and gone through this, and we're going to miss you sorely, and I am so grateful for the time that you've been on the board and what you've done for students, and I'm so grateful to have made you my friend. And so I will look forward to seeing you regularly and coming out, because you are going to be sorely missed up here.
Ms. Sasso.
I'm going to give you 4 adjectives of how I think this lady is. I think she's very spunky and a go-getter, okay? She's very professional and a hard worker, and I really take off my hat to her. Thank you, Allison.
Mr. Horskett.
Thank you. Allison, it's been a major pleasure working with you this year. I mean, you and I only have 1 year on this board together, and you were always the person I can go to about board issues, just talk, make fun of each other, make fun of other people, just just mess around. Overall, you made this experience a memorable one, and thank you so much for that.
Allison, the board has a clock for you to keep at whatever desk you want to put it at to remember us by.
And Allison, while I won't, certainly I can echo all that your colleagues have said on the board. So let me add that your advocacy for our children in this school system and for public schools started long before you became a board member. I'm absolutely certain, we all are, that that advocacy is going to continue through the PTA and possibly beyond. Your love of the public schools and what public schools do for children is well known and appreciated and thanked. Your thoughtful approach with me as a superintendent, with the staff, is very much appreciated. We've enjoyed our time together with you. You have made me a better superintendent. Thank you for everything you've done.
Would you like to?
Oh, I don't know that I can, but, well, it has been,
Okay. You don't have to speak.
well, it's been an honor, an absolute honor to serve, but you're not getting rid of me, so I'll have a lot more to say from that perspective, so get ready.
Jacob, it's your turn. Jacob, you have been such a pleasure to have on the board this year. You were always willing to be present when we needed you and with a smile on your face. Your sunny disposition will be a welcome addition over the pond. We're so proud of you for being willing to take a leap of faith and do something that most of your peers will never ever do, earn a degree from a university outside of the United States. So instead of goodbye, I'm just going to say pip pip cheerio. Mrs. Nally?
Jacob, this has been a really wonderful year working with you. I was impressed with the amount of time and effort that you put into visiting schools, going to activities, plus being a remarkable student and advocate for your fellow students, but also looking at the whole county and working hard to understand this system. I thank you. Your thoughtful responses, inquiries, you studied everything, you looked at the different ways of attacking a problem, and I just think that you have a wonderful mind, and I'm so happy that you are going to England, but I also look forward, hopefully, for you returning to Anne Arundel County and to applying all that you've learned, because you really have been a true asset. And I thank you for escorting me at the conferences. I had a younger man, you know, what can I say? But it was fun. Thank you.
Mrs. Burge.
Thank you. This is my first year I got to sit next to the student board member. I don't know if they finally trust me or what, but it could not have been better. I loved sitting next to Jacob this year. He's been a lot of fun. You've been brilliant, hardworking, well-prepared, and a fabulous advocate and representative of your fellow students. I've enjoyed every moment of this year with you as a board member. You've been fantastic. I always think that every student board member is the best, but this year I think it's true. I think you always get better every year. They're better than the last. So you've really been fantastic. I wish you only the best on your adventures in England, and hope that you'll come back and visit us when you're home.
Thank you.
Mrs. Pickard.
I forgot my mic. To anybody out in this universe that thinks a high school senior can't sit on the board and vote and be responsible for his actions, they just need to look to Mr. Horskamp, because there were times when maybe Jacob was the only adult in the room. And while I'm sure he's learned a lot, he's also taught all of us a lot and reminded us sometimes when we're off track. So to the future student board members, you know, this is an amazing opportunity for students, and I think Anne Arundel County is better for it to have a student sitting up here with all of us. And my sister's in the UK, so we got to make sure we make those connections for you, so you can maybe take the train down for the weekend. Go to her country home and get your laundry done.
Ms. Sasso.
That you're a very knowledgeable individual. You have been very active in your way of life and the community. And really, you're the representation of a true American leader. And I hope you continue this throughout all of your life, because we need people like you in the United States. Thank you.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. Jacob, this one's hard for me. I have appreciated all of our time together, and I'm pleased to be associated with you in a couple of circles. One as member of the Alumni Association now for North County High School, but then also the Student Member Association. I think there's 44-ish of us, something like that. And you continue to raise the bar. I think you've left big shoes for Ms. Williams to fill. I think you've got a tremendous future ahead of you. A degree in international relations, in essence, is going to open so many doors for you. I know where your path is, perhaps is set, but if you want to go in the private sector, higher ed industry, and join us at Laureate Education, I can pretty much guarantee you'd be hired. My concern, though, is that they would probably make you my boss. But kidding aside, you know, it's been a pleasure sitting up here with you, sitting back there with you, and I'm glad our paths have crossed, and look forward to continuing to stay in touch. Thank you.
Mrs. Hummer.
It's been a joy. It really has. It's been great. And again, I echo what Ms. Pickard said, that anyone who believes that a senior in high school does not have the maturity and the wisdom to serve in this position just needs to look at you and see that that is wrong, because you've been a valuable voice for the students of this county, and you've always spoken wisely and well, and we've appreciated it. And I'm so excited to see where your next adventures in life lead you and what future marks you're going to make in the world. I do want you to come back to the States someday, but I've thoroughly enjoyed your time away, and when you're over there, and I may be sending some of my kids to come sleep on your couch and visit you. So, or stay. We'll see.
And we have a clock for you to take overseas.
Jacob, thank you. You have done a phenomenal job. I remember when we first met, and part of my advice to you was keep focused on your job, which is to represent the students, and you have done that absolutely brilliantly. You have had your colleagues from Crask have surrounded you and supported you. They've given you fabulous advice. They are wonderful. Great advocates for students as well, but you have maintained that advocacy. You've also, extraordinarily enough, as several of your colleagues have said, been able to maintain your AP schedule and your social schedule and all those things and working, and I don't know how you figured it all out, but you did it, and you did it beautifully. For those that don't know, Jacob and I, we had a standing meeting there in the principal's conference room at North County once a month, and you came prepared every time. You had questions, and sometimes you were not easy. I had to be on my toes to answer the questions so you could be prepared, and know that that's greatly appreciated. So you have done a phenomenal job representing the 80,000 students that make up our school system. So thank you, and we have a couple things for you. We're delighted for you. And more importantly, add to the decor of your dorm room overseas. We wish you. We took the sign down, and here's your student party. So.
See, I was at school like 3 days later, and I was like, they already took my sign off?
You guys got me a little bit close to crying. I usually don't cry at these things, so you got me close this time. But not many kids my age can say that they've worked with so many outstanding people, so many supportive people like Ms. Poison, Scott, Christina, Mr. Soakworth. This position means a lot to students within the school system and throughout the state and nationally, because not many students are given the opportunity, given that they have the maturity, the responsibility, the voice that every school system needs. I'm just so honored to just be able to spend a year with you guys. I mean, it feels like everything really clicked. Now I'm just like, okay, now what's next on our list? What's next after this budget? What's next? But after, I'm still very young. I still have a lot of plans in life, which is going overseas, but maybe I'll have to do what Mr. Gillen did and come back. How old are you? But I just want to reiterate, thank you, everyone, so much. I've learned so much within just this past year that I will take throughout the rest of my life. Thank you.
We have one more recognition today, if you will allow me just a minute. We've all heard from Dr. Arletto about the fact that our people are the foundation on which we build all of our successes. I think we all know that any great organization has many types of outstanding people. Some are out in front, and we see their faces and hear their voices often. Many others, however, lead quietly behind the scenes in ways that most people don't see. Today, it is my great pleasure to recognize one of those people, Deputy Superintendent Arlen Liverman. For those of you who don't know, this is Arlen's final board meeting. He's retiring at the end of this month, bringing an end to a career that has been marked by quiet leadership, a relentless dedication to students, an undying passion for making our school system better, and with the big exception of today, remaining in the background. Now, I won't say Arlen has been here a long time, but his career does predate this boardroom and, in fact, this building. A lot has changed since Arlen first came to Anne Arundel County Public Schools 42 years ago. But throughout his tenure, from teacher to administrator, principal, director, and for the last 10 years, our deputy superintendent, Arlen Liverman has been unflinching. He has been unflinching in his belief that every action we take, both individually and collectively, should be done with the best interest of a child or children in the forefront. He has been unflinching in his belief that every child is capable of success with no exceptions. And he has been unflinching in his belief that equitable approaches and supports for all students and all staff are the cornerstones of our greatness. In the main stairwell of our building, there is a chalkboard on which those who pass can write entries to complete a thought. And the thought atop that chalkboard right now is this: the teacher who meant the most to me was blank. Amid the dozens of names is one written in green chalk and circled: Mr. Liverman, GBHS. Now, I don't know who put it there, but there are thousands of people who could be prime candidates. That's because, Mr. Liverman, you have had a tremendous impact on every level of our school system. I'm told that when you announced your retirement to your colleagues a couple months ago, you used two simple words: it's time. So if that's true, then it's time for us as well. It's time to say thank you and wish you well in the best way we can. For the English teacher in me, that means poetry. I found something by a famous author that I think summarizes our wish as well. It is by a renowned scholar you all might recognize, Dr. Theodore Seuss Geisel. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know, and you are the guy who will decide where to go. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air. Out there things can happen, and frequently do, to people as brainy and footsy as you. And then things start to happen. Don't worry, don't stew. Just go right along, you'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll go. You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Arlen, on behalf of all of us, thank you for everything you've done to impact our students and our school system. And before you go, please join me up front so we can give you something to remember us by. He was planning not to come today, so you were directed to be here.
I was directed.
So we thought of all the things we could give you, that a bell would be the right thing to do. And it says, Arlen Liverman, Outstanding Service Deputy Superintendent in today's date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so very much.
Mrs. Nally has a few words too.
Well, Arlen, I'm going to really miss you. We have shared, Arlen has been in the system only I was in the system 2 years longer than you. So, I mean, when he leaves, I think I'm the last man standing here for the length of time. But I don't want to say that. I have thoroughly enjoyed, we go back and talk about all the superintendents and principal, everyone we've worked with. We have the greatest time. Last night we talked, and I always love his story of how he was hired. And I'm just going to briefly say he drove up from North Carolina for an interview with Catherine Frantum, a close friend of my family's actually, who was principal at Glen Burnie High School, and there was a confusion. He wasn't really supposed to have the interview. I'm not sure. What was it she thought? That's right. She was thinking she was interviewing a female. Well, anyway, he walks in and interviews, and she was so impressed, she hired him on the spot. And so began his career in Anne Arundel County, which is, you know, interesting because I knew Catherine so well, and she had served on the Board of Education also, and a wonderful lady. So her legacy continued with you, and I just want to thank you for everything you've done for children, your calm, steady demeanor, and over the last 9 years on the board, when there have been times where I've gotten myself all kind of worked up over something, you were there, and I really have appreciated, and you will be greatly missed.
Okay, now we have like tears in the audience. I made it through this whole thing without crying. That is a first. But I have my Kleenex ready if anybody needs them. Item 2.06, school and community highlights. And we don't have any? It's not been slow. Well, I will summarize what I know we've all been doing since June 1st. We finished graduations. We had a wonderful retirement or retiree reception for those who were retiring. We've toured some schools. We went to Tyler Heights and Richard Henry Lee and Edgewater to see exactly what they look like inside, so we'd have a better understanding of the capital needs. We went to the Little Free School, which is out in Davidsonville. If you haven't ever seen that, it's tucked away in a neighborhood, but it's absolutely fascinating. I know some of us, George and I and some others in the audience, had gone to a conference sponsored by the NSBA on equity, and there was also one on advocacy a week and a half ago or so in DC. And I think that's everything that we've been up to. The only thing I wanted to add, which is really not board related so much, but our videographer, I don't know if you've seen Wendell Holland out here setting up the camera and out in our audience every now and then. But a couple of weeks ago, I had the chance to go to the Annapolis Summer Garden Theater for the first time ever. And there's this man on stage, and I'm like, he looks really familiar. And I look at the program during intermission, and Wendell is up there singing and dancing on The Wedding Singer. So if you have a chance this summer to go to Summer Garden Theater, evidently he's over there performing. He's so quiet here, but he's out there on stage singing and dancing. Awesome surprise. Okay, item 2.07, the Krask report.
Good morning, President Korbalak, Dr. Arlotto, and board members. My name is Christina Dyson, and I am a rising STEM senior at North County High School and the newly elected Krask second vice president. Moving forward, Krask is taking no time off for the summer. This Friday, we will kick off the Insight Summer Leadership Intensive, which is a series of leadership development events designed to prepare new leaders for the upcoming school year. Friday will be the Summer Leadership Retreat at Arlington Echo from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Over the course of the next few months, we will also participate in activities focusing on equity, diversity, social justice, political advocacy, educational policy, conflict resolution, campaigning, mental health, and of course there will be some team-building activities and fun along the way. We would also like to take a moment to acknowledge our appreciation and thanks for both Ms. Pickard and Jacob. Ms. Pickard, you've been kind enough to give us time and attention, and we look forward to working with you as a PTA president. Jacob, while your year as a board member is coming to an end, this is also the culmination of something bigger for us. You have been a vital member of our organization and an outstanding friend, and I should know because I'm the one who physically dragged you into Krask 3 years ago. We will miss everything that you bring to the table, including dog hair, an undying devotion to Netflix, honesty flavored with just a touch of teenage snark, and a daily afternoon hiccup that never fails to disappoint. Much of what we have all achieved together happened accidentally along the way while we were trying to keep up with your various endeavors. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the students of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you.
Christina, can I just say thank you to you. Thank you for thanking Jacob. He's done a phenomenal job. We've talked a lot with the executive team about student voice. We're talking a lot with our principals about student voice. You and your colleagues this year, I've never seen in my 10 years the strength of the student voice as you and your colleagues have brought to the table. Your coordinated, well thought out remarks in front of the county council that evening were phenomenal. Again, you and your colleagues, if the four of you were standing here, I'd be thanking all four of you. You did a phenomenal job. But you embody student voice, and I just wanted to say thank you. It's something that we as adults are learning from, and we can do a better job of promoting the student voice, and you're going to be our role model for that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Horskamp.
Christina, what can I say? We've been friends for a very long time now, and we've taken over a number of school-based organizations, CRAS, and a bunch of other things. I'm proud to say, as a former second vice president of CRAS, that someone with amazing hair and amazing voice is able to take my position. Well, Michael's now, but not yours. But thank you so much for everything that you do. And now, since I won't be at North County next year, I hope you'll make it on your own, because most of her friends this year were seniors, so she's kind of on her own right now. But I know you'll make great strides. I know you're going to go to a great university and just have a fabulous future. And clarification, everyone, I've had the hiccups for 8 years straight, every day. I think I've only told Miss Patty about that, and so yeah, that was the last part. But, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.08 is the PTA report.
Good morning, President Korbalak, Vice President Nally, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. I'm Pam Bukowski, President of the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs. The Council would like to honor Jacob Horskamp, who has completed an outstanding year as an articulate, intellectual, thoughtful, full voting member of the Board of Education, who has represented his constituency well. And Allison Pickard, who, although only allowed to serve for 1 year, has impressed us with her insightful and rational approach to issues and has left no doubt as to her unwavering commitment to the 80,000 minds being educated in Anne Arundel County and the 10,000 employees who are part of that process. We wish Mr. Horskamp good fortune as he moves to another chapter in his life and look forward to Ms. Pickard's continual involvement in other capacities in Anne Arundel County schools. We also like to wish Deputy Superintendent Arlen Liverman well. In his role, he has continually raised the bar for employees and students alike, and although a man of few words, he definitely has led by example. At this time of the year, we also like to offer congratulations to all of our graduating seniors in our schools. So many have brought honor to themselves in the schools, earning coveted scholarships and other extraordinary achievements. It goes without saying that some of the best and brightest examples of our nation's young people have had the foundation set here in Anne Arundel County. They are celebrated on social media, in the newspaper, school newsletters, recognized at national school and community events. I don't think a week goes by when we have not been made aware of accomplishments in activism, advocacy, the arts or PVA, humanities, sports, STEM, innovation, community outreach, IB, academics, leadership, general scholarship, and the list goes on. These students have set goals, worked hard, and have been rewarded. However, and in absolutely no way diminishing these successes, we would be remiss if we did not also acknowledge the triumphs of those for whom seemingly small steps are personal giant leaps. Our students who have had to graduate in less conventional ways, through night school or attending an alternative school. Our students not on the 4-year timetable because they may have lost their way, but with guidance and encouragement do work to reach the threshold that will allow them to graduate. Our students who work hard to achieve average or maybe even barely passing grades, but persevere to get that diploma. Our students who earn a certificate but not a diploma yet, we hope that time will come, and earn the thrill of walking across the stage. We celebrate all of our graduates and know that parents, community, teachers, counselors, administration are all part of the village supporting our students. As the school year winds down, AACC PTA continues to support our local units and students. We are currently collecting documentation to disperse $15,000 in state and county grants to high schools, to 11 high schools who participated in offering a safe and substance-free after-prom event. It is also that time of the year when we talk about bringing closure, and that includes me as well. This is the last time I will report before the Board of Ed in this capacity. In 8 days, I will be stepping down, having termed out after having served 4 years as the AACC PTA president. When I accepted the presidency, I was the first teacher and possibly remain the only in that role in Anne Arundel County and in the state of Maryland. I felt in my role I would be able to highlight the T in PTA and to urge my colleagues to participate as active partners in their school associations. I have worked to help beleaguered PTAs to bring themselves into compliance, to train tentative new leaders, and to represent our parents the very best that I could. Like all volunteer activities, it's been a lot of work, but I've been very fortunate to have had an excellent group to constitute our AACC PTA board. In addition, we in Anne Arundel County have opportunities to meet with our superintendent on a regular basis, to participate in events with the Board of Ed, and to have a seat on a variety of task forces and committees. We have had excellent access to many staff members here at the central office. The fact that PTA has a place on the Board of Education meeting agenda monthly has been the physical proof that we are definitely given a voice. It has been an amazing opportunity to share and to advocate without a time limit. I have to say, though, having a designated PTA parking spot is really the best perk ever. And to be honest, I will truly miss that. But I am grateful to have had this experience in a caring school system who values PTA, and I thank you all for that. In fulfilling our mission, AACC PTA joins the AACPS community to engage, empower, educate, to promote equity and accelerated student achievement, to hold true that all children are capable of success, no exceptions. As always, PTA thanks you for these opportunities, not only to speak for every child one voice, but to engage with all of our AACPS stakeholders to be part of the collaborative partnership to empower every child to find his or her own voice. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Pam, as well. The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 2 cards that were completed for this portion, Robert Silkworth and Lisa Rodvian.
Good morning, President Korbelak, Vice President Nally, distinguished board members, Dr. Arlotto. For the record, my name is Robert Silkworth, and I am the chairperson of the High School Concerns Committee, and I'm here this morning to give a final report for that. We held our last meeting on June the 8th, and we discussed a few topics, some of which such as some of the impact that we might have about grading regulation changes. But I usually choose 1 or 2 items to focus on, and I chose today 2 things. One of them is that this has been an extremely challenging year, and in my 44 years, probably one of the more challenging of all. And I would simply suggest that we continue to focus, as I've heard some of the information about the folks that are retiring. One thing that they all have in common is their caring attitude for the kids that we serve. And I've heard that next year may very well be a little bit more difficult when it comes to financial issues. And my recommendation to you would be to make sure that as we advocate for our children, that whatever would be needed to help the children, whatever monies might be needed, that we go for that and we ask for that without worrying about what the funding authorities might say. The other thing we were talking about was the vision for our High School Concerns Committee. I've always taken a collaborative approach, and we have decided this year we were going to be here every single month, and we have done that. And we would expect to continue to do that next year, to continue to work together with you all to collaborate to help our students find the greatness that we know that they have within themselves. I usually end with some kudos. Well, there have been a lot of kudos this morning, and I would have to echo the kudos given to Arlen Liverman. He has been an extremely great advocate for our students and our staff, and on behalf of the teachers, I certainly do thank him for that. He will be missed. Ms. Picard, I haven't known you that long, but I have to tell you, you are absolutely going to be missed. Your advocacy for our kids has been wonderful, and I also know that you're going to be here, and that advocacy will continue. And Jacob, the decision, is it here? You know, I've joked about who has been the best student board member. Was it Terry Gilliland, or was it Jacob Horskamp? Well, you know, that's a really difficult thing to determine, and I've thought about that. I thought about saying, Jacob, you know, you edged him out just a little bit, but then I started thinking about this, and that is that both of you were student board members at a time when we had many difficult decisions that needed to be made. The years, both of those years were very challenging, and I think both of you did outstanding job, and I echo the praise from all the other board members. If anyone thinks that a student cannot be a board member here in Anne Arundel County, they don't know what they're talking about. So Jacob, it's been a pleasure. I know you're going to do great things. We will hear from you in the future. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Rodbian. I'm a teacher in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And I also want to just express my thanks to the outgoing board members. You have become familiar faces to me as I'm here a lot. And to Arlen, oh, did he depart? Arlen Liverman as well. Anyway, I think I made a promise a while back that I was going to continue to come and testify about later school start times until it actually changed. So here I am. And the evidence that it is something that needs to happen is even stronger today. I don't know if you've seen, but over the past month, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Center for Disease Control, the National Institutes of Health was joined by the American Medical Association in recommending that high school and middle school start times should not begin, that high school and middle school should not start before 8:30 a.m. And the fact that, you know, we have a growing body of evidence of health practitioners making this recommendation, yet we're still making very slow progress. I want to give you a quote. This is from a superintendent and a former high school principal in Nauset Schools in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, named Thomas Conrad. With almost 40 years in public education, this is one of the finest changes I have made in improving student learning. I haven't been in education that long, but I've never seen anything that big. In his school, tardiness was down 35%, and the number of Fs and Ds were cut in half. Imagine the kind of impact that that could have on some of our most struggling schools to be able to cut our Ds and Fs in half. Impacts are not just about grades and tardiness, but also about things like student behavior, teen obesity, depression. And I've had conversations where I think a lot of people say, well, I just don't really see it. You know, if kids only get to bed a little bit earlier, you know, we can make an impact. But, you know, when we have those conversations one-on-one, often the people, you know, are just looking at the people right around them. And things can be very difficult to see. Depression is hard to see. The increase of teen obesity can be hard to see on a big scale. Small decreases in cognitive function can be hard to see. But when researchers who have put together mountains and mountains of data and come to this conclusion, yet we continue to ignore it, we're missing an opportunity to make, you know, huge gains at the margins, because it's not that big a deal and it's not that important. So I urge you as the board to keep this on your radar. You've got, I think, $600,000, you know, in your hands to take action on this issue. People may not even feel the impact of their, you know, cognitive decline because that they're too tired to realize that they're not performing up to what they could be. But people that have really analyzed and looked at the data, they see the difference. We need to be part of that difference.
Janet Norman.
Janet Norman, Annapolis Cluster Schools. I thank you for all your hard work on the budget, and I'm really happy that the county council and executive funded many of the things that you were requesting to help our 80,000 students. I hope that everyone has a chance to go and look at the live stream video of the auditor's report when she was making recommendations to the county council, because there are a few things that I'm hoping you can work on improvements. One was the school sidewalks fund, where each year you ask for $250,000 for improving to accommodate students and reduce the need for buses. As of May, the available balance was $353,000, and the auditor requested that they remove $250,000 again this year, that you did not need your request because you are not achieving and constructing sidewalks like you need to be. Said the average annual expenditures were $108,000 per year. Highest activity was in FY15, $159,000. If the county council is giving you money in a very tight budget, we really need you to spend it with utmost concern for expanding sidewalk access.
Ms. Norman, I'm going to interrupt you there.
Sure.
Because you need to understand, and thank you for bringing it up so the public understands, that money the board requests in the budget, $250,000 each year for sidewalk construction, and that money never comes to the board, and it's never money that we spend. It's money that gets turned right back to the county and Department of Works, and we work with them every year as other agencies do, the police department or fire and rescue or Parks and Rec, where we make recommendations. We give them a wish list of where we would like sidewalks built. This board and our construction team does not build sidewalks off of school property. So all of this money, that $250,000, is set aside for projects outside of our immediate school surroundings, but connect schools to neighborhoods. Okay? So understand, so your comment that the board is not spending the money is inaccurate. The board takes the money and it goes right back to the Department of Public Works. They then spend the money based on their priority list. We simply give them priorities each and every year where we would like these sidewalk connections made. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but you might want to discuss with the county council, because they are under the impression that you all, the county councilmen in their lives.
The county council is not under that impression. The county council knows it's just the Department of Public Works is trying to keep pace, and they're trying to get these projects done, and these projects are on their to-do list. It's not the board's to-do list. And the Department of Public Works is doing a phenomenal job, and they work very closely with us as well as the other agencies throughout the county. They are fantastic, and they've done a fantastic job, and they're going to continue to work with us. But I just want to make sure that you and the public understand how that spending works.
Well, the county councilmen in their live stream video expressed their dismay that the school system is requesting money and not getting the sidewalks built. So, that me seeing that the county councilmen have that concern that every year the school system. So whatever you can do to change that situation, we greatly need safer paths to school for our students. As you know, it's been a pretty disturbing spring in the Annapolis area with students getting hit, safety around our schools, and having our students be in school to be safe. I urge you to act with all the money you have and act quickly on later school start times so that our high schoolers don't have to make the choice of whether to get up at 5:30 a.m. or whether to skip school and be in a dangerous situation. We can't mourn any more kids in Annapolis, either in the short term or the long term, with lives wasted. So I urge you to please do everything you can to enact the American Medical Society's recommendation. They say, while implementing a delayed school start time can be emotionally and potentially stressful issue for school districts and members of the community, the health benefits for adolescents far outweigh any potential negative consequences. So I urge you to act with all haste. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sasso.
Janet, can I address something to you since Dr. Arlotta already addressed the fact that it's the Department of Public Works that is responsible for it?
Yes.
Can we ask you if you can go back to the Department of Public Works and next time bring back the report why they have not spent the money?
in the live stream video, it was said, well, some communities don't want the sidewalks. So I'm hoping that you all can get with the Public Works, and the Annapolis Education Commission, of which I'm on, would be happy to help identify sidewalk areas that are needed and wanted and can be implemented.
Can you do that then and then basically present it to the Department of Public Works and have them tell us back why?
Well, I think you would be in a stronger position than me in getting, a slot on their busy schedule. That's why I'm bringing
then
it
can
here.
you bring us the report back on the sidewalks that the communities want?
We can ask our PTAs of the Annapolis Cluster, Annapolis Education Commission, to identify sidewalk areas that are missing and would need additional funds to make safer. Thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
Dr. Arlotto, I'm guessing also that the funds in that sidewalk fund could only be used on property that wasn't in the city of Annapolis. The Anne Arundel County Department of Public Works probably wouldn't be building, so it would have to be schools outside of the city of Annapolis. Okay, thank you.
I don't have any additional cards at the moment. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? Okay, we'll move on to our action items. Item 4.01 is the fiscal year 2017 operating budget adoption. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Board of Education fiscal year 2017 operating budget to include internal budget adjustments as approved by the board.
Second. And we have a presentation.
Very brief. For the record, Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Stansky, Director of Finance Operations.
So the first page of the attachment that's part of the exhibit for item 4.01, the FY17 operating budget adoption, depicts essentially the changes of condition that occurred since County Executive Hsu initially released his recommended operating budget on the 2nd of May 2016, and what transpired as of the adoption of the budget by the County Council on June 15, 2016. So let me begin by hearkening back to the comments that I made just 2 days after the County Executive released his budget. The operating budget that was delivered and recommended by the County Executive took great strides in providing funding for many of the critical areas that the school district had asked for, and we were grateful for that. Through hearing public testimony and working with the County Council and the County Administration, they were able to make some further improvements in the operating budget. So I'd simply like to highlight some of the transactions that have occurred since that time. If you take a look at the revenue line, which is the top third of the page, there were no changes as expected to any of the categories absent the county government funding. So there were some increases to the county government contribution towards the Board of Education. So now in the 2017 fiscal year, we'll be receiving just slightly in excess of $12.6 million in direct unrestricted funding from the county government. The remaining revenue elements, both the unrestricted, the restricted, and the one-time non-recurring cost numbers all remain the same. So year over year, including the non-recurring one-time monies, the Board of Education will receive sufficient revenue to support a $36.1 million increase that represents approximately a 3.3% increase. And again, that does include that non-recurring. So specifically then, in terms of the major changes, they really occur in two categories that are near the bottom, about 3/4 of the way down the page. You'll see that in the area of the home hospital, evening high, and summer school category, the Board of Education had initially requested $594,000 approximately to provide for an hourly pay increase for those individuals that, again, support our students in the home hospital, evening high, or summer school arena. The Board of Education heard testimony and knows quite well that it has been many, many years that those individuals have not received an hourly pay increase, and the county council heard much of that same testimony that aligned with and supported the testimony that you had heard. Therefore, the county council restored that approximately $594,000 in revenue that will make it possible for the Board of Education and the Board of Education, in some cases in collaboration with its bargaining units, to provide compensation increase in those areas. Secondly, and maybe equally noteworthy, is the remaining teachers. As you recall, the Board of Education had asked for 33 classroom teachers to support our rising enrollment growth. We rose about 770.5 students year over year. And the 33 teachers that was included in the county executive's initial budget request essentially allowed us to break even with that rising enrollment number that I referenced earlier. However, beginning in the 2007-2008 school year, and since that time, we've gone through some troubled economic times, and in many of those intervening years, we were not able, financially able, nor could the county support us in the manner required to keep up with the enrollment growth that occurred during that 6 or 7 year period of time. So this is the initial foray into beginning to make some inroads at reducing some of those classroom sizes, the spot classroom sizes across the county that unfortunately had expanded as a result of that economic downturn. Again, the county council heard the testimony loud and clear from the public when they held their public budget hearings, and with the support of the county executive, who introduced a supplemental budget amendment down to the county council, they did provide sufficient funding to allocate and fully support 10 additional FTEs to, again, allow us to begin to make inroads for that prior class size reduction. So in summary, the Board of Education requested authorization for 100 FTEs. As you will see in the exhibit that's before you this morning, all 100, so 100 out of 100 FTEs are fully supported within the budget. We're authorized to onboard those positions, and we have sufficient funding to do that. With that, we'll terminate our overview and take any questions that the board might have.
Mrs. Birch.
I know that there is still some question as to whether the governor is going to release the money that would help out with the pension shift contribution. So if we were to receive that state money, what would happen when we got it?
So we don't have appropriation authority for it.
Right.
So we would have to go to this body and request an amended budget or receive authorization at the superintendent's recommendation to amend our budget to receive those additional revenues and expend them appropriately within the appropriate state categories. We would then work with the administration to introduce a bill, and naturally the county council would have to take affirmative action to adjust, amend, and increase our appropriation authority within the specific categories where that happens to fall. And that is the exact same action we would have to take if we unexpectedly won a grant in the month of October,
Right.
or anything else. We would either go at that time, or we would possibly wait until, for example, the second quarter, when we customarily do a mid-year revenue adjustment.
Right. So now obviously the state would want that money to be spent for that specific purpose and not for any other purpose, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So-
It would almost in all certainty come with a tremendous amount of strings attached to it.
So we might have to ask for the money that's currently in that category to be transferred to another category.
Potentially, again, we would have to analyze that. I'm certain that the superintendent would bring a recommendation to the board, but the board would be at liberty to make any other internal adjustments as they
Like
deem
maybe
fit.
healthcare?
That possibly could be something you
All
may
right,
want to
just-
consider.
Okay, all right, I'm just coming up with a suggestion out of, thought maybe that might be a good idea. Okay, I'm still crossing my fingers that the governor's going to release that money, so.
This is really a generous budget. It's the most generous budget we've seen in probably a decade. I just want to thank everybody who went and attended the town halls with the county executive, who came out to the county council meetings and the hearings, and went to, came before the board and everything. it's just a testimony that advocacy and communication and collaboration really do work. So I think, I'm especially grateful for the step increase that we asked for our employees. I know that was important. And the home hospital funding to increase those salaries. We've heard what our employees were saying, and we really wanted to be able to honor them with an increase. So I'm very grateful to see that. The only other question I had, since we got a zeroed out on the school start and dismissal timeline, I just had a question about the bill that went through that said that we would no longer have to pay gas tax on our buses or would be billed for gas tax from our contractors. Will we see some savings from that we might be able to use to perhaps purchase a couple extra buses if we choose to move forward with Start School Later?
Potentially. So the bill got passed and was allowed to go into law. The comptroller's office is formulating, as with any taxing matter, the comptroller's office has to create essentially the day-to-day regulations and the standard operating procedures on how that's going to be administered. They've not yet issued that guidance, so neither us in the public sector as a public school district nor our contractors who have contracts with us, we don't exactly know what that's going to look like or what the mathematics behind that's going to be. So that's still in the to be determined box, but we eagerly look forward to receiving that guidance from the comptroller's office, being able to digest that, working with our purchasing and accounting and contracting community to implement that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pickard?
I just wanted to echo what President Korbalak said about the budget. It is extremely exciting and encouraging to see the increases fall out the way they did, and I firmly believe we have this lovely collaborative budget because of our parent, teacher, and student advocates that came out, and I look forward to building on that momentum in the year forward.
Mrs. Hummer?
Yes, this is a fabulous budget, and I think from start to finish, everybody involved in this really worked hard to meet the priorities of the school system, from Superintendent Dr. Arlotto coming out to us with his budget that reflected the priorities that we have. The county executive came back with a very generous budget that met most things, and then we worked in collaboration with the state and with the county council to make it even better from what we originally had. And the families and the teachers and the students that came out and spoke echoed what they felt was important for this. So it was truly a group effort from the state level down to our little ones in pre-K, and it's great to see. I'm particularly excited about the increase in teachers to reduce some class sizes, because I know we all want that, and for the home and hospital folks, but everything in it is very good, and I think that this means look forward to a great year with all these priorities being met. So thank you and your team for all your hard work in getting this done as well.
Mrs. Birch?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to clarify something that was said earlier. The budget includes the amount of money for a step. A step needs to be negotiated with all of the units. So we still have to see what comes out in negotiations, but we do have enough money to give everyone a step.
Correct. It's a cash equivalent, so it's a placeholder to facilitate a step movement should that be the culmination of the negotiation efforts.
Okay, all right. But until the negotiations are complete, there won't be a step increase.
Yes, ma'am. And again, as the exhibit demonstrate, the word placeholder is up there purposefully.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. But I also wanted to say that this is my 8th year on the board, and this is the best budget I've seen since I've been here, and I'm quite grateful for everyone who was involved. From our folks who created a great budget, to the county executive who started out, to the county council who filled in some spots that really needed to be fixed. So I think that collaboratively we all work better than we do individually. And as others said, I don't think it could have happened without the incredible support from our parents and teachers who came out and were heard that education is important in this county, and that everyone thinks education is important in this county, and that it can't be looked over anymore. So thank you.
Mrs. Nally.
I'd like to echo those comments by Mrs. Burge. It's my 9th year, and this is the best budget. I want to thank County Executive Shue. I want to thank members of the County Council. I want to thank all of our staff, because I think this collaborative effort, and again, the advocacy of our community members, all of this combined, and it was done in a positive way. I think we need to continue to focus on what's good for our children, and I think that this budget has done that, and I think that I just want to thank you all.
Dr. Arlato.
Thank you. Again, I just want to reiterate our thanks and just to highlight two words that President Korbelak mentioned, and that's communication and collaboration. It's something we as a school system talk a lot about in the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, but this truly was, and I think we can really highlight the communication that went on and the collaboration from our team who put together the budget, and all that anguish and all those hours. It's not easy to do. But to continue to focus our efforts on really where we're going to grow children, and so I thank you for that. I do want to thank publicly Alex and Matt and their teams for doing a phenomenal job. Bob Mosier for all the work the three of you in particular have done in communication with the county executives, administrative team, as well as the individual county council members. I do want to thank Mr. Shue and his team. Mrs. Brandenburg has been a great advocate for our public schools, and has been it's been a difficult go at times to be the go-between, but she continues to listen and advocate where she believes it's appropriate with the county executive. Certainly the county council is willing to have ongoing conversations with us, and so that communication collaboration has been key. Lots of phone calls, lots of text messages, lots of stand to the side conversations during graduation ceremonies where we can get some of the really important work done, and I appreciate the county council members continuing to have that communication and collaboration with us. They've been really willing to learn along with the county executive what it is that we do as we look to build the school system to the best that we can be. So thanks to the team. And thanks to our public officials. We're delighted with a best budget in the past decade.
I think when Ms. Brandenburg and I started doing presentations a few years ago, we went around with the "We are Anne Arundel County" title slide. It's taken a few years, but I really feel like this reflects that we are Anne Arundel County. We're really working together. Students, parents, teachers, citizens, county council, the state delegation, the governor, and our county executive. All right, I have one public comment on this item. Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good morning, Dr. Arlato and members of the board. As you know, Lisa Van Buskirk with Start School Later in Arundel County. Congratulations on a very good budget from the County Executive and County Council for fiscal year 2017. In his December presentation, Dr. Arlato had asked that everything be funded before schools could move to safer and healthier hours, especially he would prefer funding for early education. Many of you demanded of Start School Later's members that we advocate for funding for other education items before we advocated for funding for start times. Well, SLL members did what you asked. We advocated for bilingual facilitators, STEM programs, facilities upgrades, teachers' pay, more teachers, home health teacher raises, and much more. The county funded above maintenance effort, including the early education initiative. Now it's time you do something for the students in exchange. Don't do it for us as an organization as a quid pro quo. Please do it for the students. Please implement the start time change the board said that they would do this time a year ago. As so eloquently stated by high school students at the County Council's budget hearing at Annapolis High School, they are tired of being tired and tired of being told that next year start times will happen. Please make student health a priority by demanding AACPS implement your vision for healthy and safe school hours. It was wonderful to be distracted by grand visions of meeting the American Academy of Pediatrics, U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and now the American Medical Association recommendation that no middle or high schools start before 8:30. But we collectively, including my organization, lost sight of the $602,000 on hand and failed to hold AACPS accountable to order the buses with FY 2016 money. So now, August 2016, the original goal of this board to change start times will come and go with the same unhealthy status quo. Please demand that AACPS order those buses in July so that they can no longer use the excuse it takes 6 to 8 months to order buses. If AACPS ever gets around to admitting they have more money from fuel savings, not paying gas taxes, the $13 million that the auditor couldn't find where they made savings, then you can order more buses at that point. But please order those 10 buses now so that we're guaranteed some kind of change. Please demand that AACPS move up its timetable for software implementation so it can be used no later than January 2017 to identify a better change for August 2017. Because I'm an engineer and an optimist, I refuse to believe that the only way to use a software is a slide, be it 13 minutes, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes. There are an unknown number of possible arrangements of school start times under the current budget, let alone 10 more buses. We encourage and reward students who think outside of the box. Let's have us think outside the box to solve start times for Anne Arundel County. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about the operating budget at this time?
Janet Norman, Annapolis Cluster Schools. Again, in watching the auditor's testimony to the county council, it was distressing that when she mentioned the $13 million that had been identified by AACPS as savings from FY 2016, she said she had been provided no information about that money, where that money came from, what categories it's in, whether it really existed. And so I'm hoping that we can increase transparency so that the auditor and the general public knows where the money comes from. If you're ever on the sidelines of a soccer field, people say, gee, we keep giving the school system money, what are they doing with it? So if we can be as transparent as possible, we can answer those questions and we can all advocate for the best possible school system that our money can buy. So I would urge you, this has been asked before, where did those $13 million come from? What was not spent? We know the $602,000 was not spent on buses that the county council told you it wanted. But where else was did that money come from? My other request is for you to, in your budget, keep considering that students in Newton, Massachusetts get a full night's sleep every 2 weeks more than Anne Arundel County students. 9 additional hours of sleep every 2 weeks. So we are not letting our students be competitive on the national scale that we need to be. So I really hope that you will use the gas tax savings, that you will move with the urgency that this issue is requiring, and use that the depression and other things that are happening with high school students and academic achievement gaps are greater than perhaps the concerns of finding a gully next to a bus stop routing in the coastal plain of Maryland. So please move as fast as you can to achieve what you need to in start times with the money that you have. Thank you.
Ms. Sasso.
Lisa and to Janet. I just want to make sure. We had a meeting last week with Claudia O'Keefe.
Yes.
In reference to the bus system. And she answered every single question, every single thing that had to do. And I would like to hear publicly from her,
basically, because I think we went through a lot of information given to her so that we could prove to you as a board that not only are we working hard, but we are basically trying our darnest to get it done.
That's wonderful to hear.
Okay?
That is great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts.
I have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor of approving the operating budget for FY 2017? Motion passes 8-0-0. Next, we have item 4.02, the FY 2017 capital budget adoption. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt the County Council approved FY 2017 capital budget as presented.
Are you moving or seconding? Okay. And we have a brief presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Again, for the record, Alex Sheknovich, Chief Operating Officer.
Lisa Seaman Crawford, Director of Facilities.
And so this may be a little bit of deja vu again, because as you recall in the comments that I provided in May, that the county executive's recommendation did in fact provide a record level of funding on the capital improvement budget, much of it aligned with his initiative to expand the bonding capacity of the county, and much of it aligned through conversations and his belief that our capital facilities had been underinvested into for many, many years, and the backlog that the MGT of America company helped us identify and quantify needed to be addressed. But with that said, as with the operating budget, the continued advocacy of the Board of Education and of our parent and teaching community and other interested constituents through the month of May, as the County Council continue to hold public hearings and deliberate on the recommendations issued by the county executive, did in fact generate interest in improving upon the initial set of recommendations that the county executive had issued on the 2nd of May. So I would like to briefly walk the board through those in the exhibit ahead of you, and I will again only speak to those items that had changed since that initial deliverable. So much of the interest and discussion had centered around the 3 elementary schools, that being priority number 19, 20, 21, Edgewater, Tyler Heights, and Richard Henry Lee, where the Board of Education had requested full funding for both the feasibility and design for those. And as you recall, that it was only the feasibility study element that was initially recommended within the county executive's budget. Through, again, deliberation and discussions between executive and legislative branch of the county council, a supplemental budget was put down that advanced some of the design money into FY17. So again, as you recall, the initial funding level for each of those 3 categories in FY17 was $177,000, and that has been increased to just over $1 million for both Edgewater and Tyler Heights, and just under $1 million for Richard Henry Lee. And then in the out years, which we won't cover today, it included a continued acceleration of the completion of the design and the beginning of the construction, such that those 3 schools will be completed in a much quicker time frame than was initially proposed within the county executive's budget. The next change is essentially a mathematical correction, line item 27, aging schools. In the final adoption of the state of Maryland's budget, there each and every year is a finalization or a true-up over the amount that we estimate we're going to be receiving from the state for the aging schools program, and that which we ultimately receive. There was a modest $34,000 correction in that. Now, it is important to note, however, and this will loop back to the comments issued by promulgated by Ms. Burge earlier, that the funding for the aging schools program that's now established at $566,000 is also caught up and captured in that same suite or basket of funding items that the General Assembly passed the authorization to fund and yet the governor is currently contemplating whether he will or will not act on that. So the county council has provided us the appropriation authority, so we are authorized to spend those monies, but only upon receipt of the revenue from the state. And again, that will take affirmative action by the governor of the state to release those funds so that they can be distributed. And then and only upon that occurrence will we proceed with the projects. But again, unlike the comments that I had with the operating budget, the county executive and county council has authorized us, so we will not have to go back to the county. We will simply have to provide the county government with proof, sufficient proof to the budget office and to the comptroller's office and to the county auditor that in fact those funds have been released by the governor. So that simplifies things slightly. The final two changes to the capital budget occurred in line items 29 and 30, that being auditorium seat replacements and playground equipment improvements. Both of those categories were initially recommended to not be funded, so the funding amount was zero. The county council, again, collaboratively worked with the administration, and the supplemental budget was put forward that restored the funding, the $400,000 for the auditorium seat replacement and the $300,000 for the playground equipment. That essentially rounds out the capital budget. So in total, of the $255.6 million worth of appropriation authority that was requested for by this Board of Education, $243.6 million of it has been authorized. And the final comment is, again, remember that $94.1 million of that big number is the appropriation authority for that Department of Defense grant that we continue to work and navigate our way through the grant approval process. But again, the county government has fully provided us with the requisite appropriation authority. So if and when we do hear, and we hope it's positive news from the federal government, that we've been approved for that grant, we will be poised to move forward without having to re-engage in any sort of legislative action over at the Arundel Center. And with that, we will conclude our remarks this morning.
Mrs. Birch. Well, I think I can speak for the board that this also is obviously a very generous budget, and everybody knows that we were very concerned about the 3 elementary schools that weren't initially on the list for design, to begin design, or have their project carried out each subsequent year. So we're very pleased to see that that's changed. We had the chance to visit those 3 schools, and for those who hadn't been there before, it was just confirmation that there's an urgent need out there. We saw Edgewater, I call it the sick building syndrome. We spoke with a teacher who had been ill the entire fall semester. Her students were lethargic. They didn't know what was going on, and it's just particulate matter that was making her kind of have asthmatic symptoms and things like that, all coming from the building. There was a room where they had just cleaned the mold off that had become black mold once upon a time, and they'd cleaned it again regularly, and 2 weeks later it was already starting to be yellow. So it was coming back. So the building itself is the concern there. And Tyler Heights, overcrowding, obviously, and I think everybody who hadn't been there before, seeing I call it the cafe gymnatorium, where the students have to share that space to eat lunch, have any kind of auditorium activities, and their gym is just not acceptable. And then Richard Henry Lee is one of our open space schools that we still need to fix. So rather than investing in closing the open space, it's time to just take down the building or remodel it and close it all up and make it a nice, shiny new school as best we can. So we're very grateful to see that those projects are on the 6-year plan. Mrs. Pickard.
I think my comments about the operating budget are pretty similar when looking at this capital budget. We did have the opportunity to see the 3 schools, which was pretty powerful to walk those schools. So it is nice to see, we mentioned how a budget reflects our community's values, and I think this budget is spot on. and I look forward to continuing the advocacy efforts on the Capitol side as well with all of our parents and students in the community. But this is exciting, and again, echoing what I said earlier, thank you to all those who came out and advocated for our education system and the county.
Mrs. Birch.
I think what I appreciate most about the advocacy efforts on the capital budget was that the advocacy came from all parts of the county, not just the folks who would benefit from these schools. That this was a time when the parents and the people in our county realized that we really are all in this together, and if we want our children to have a quality education, we need all of our children to have a quality education. And there were, parents from Severna Park advocating for the kids in Annapolis, and things like that. And I think that's a wonderful thing to say about our education system, when people will stand up for others, that this system be fair and equitable for all of our children. So I want to thank everyone who did their part in making sure that all of our children would be treated well. So thank you, everyone.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor of the FY 2017 capital budget? Motion passes 8-0-0. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Lisa.
The next item on the agenda is 4.03, Terms of Employment for Unit 1 employees for FY 2017. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 1 employees for fiscal year 2017.
Second.
We have a presentation.
Yes, good morning. For the record, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. To Ms. Korbelak, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board, the negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County have been unable to reach a tentative agreement for FY 2017 and have initiated impasse proceedings. Accordingly, terms of employment have been established for Unit 1 employees, which recommend that all provisions of the negotiated agreement continue except for the following changes. 1, no step or other compensation increases will take effect. Any compensation increase for Unit 1 employees will be implemented in accordance with the ratified agreement and/or mediated settlement. Further, any increase in compensation will be provided to employees as soon as practicable in accordance with the Division of Human Resources payroll cutoff timelines. Secondly, the Annapolis High School Memorandum of Understanding will be extended for the 2016-17 school year and will expire on June 30th, 2017. The current negotiated agreement expires on June 30th, 2016, and I respectfully request your approval of the terms of employment to take effect on July 1st, 2016, which will remain in effect until a successor agreement has been ratified. Thank you.
I don't have any board questions, or I do. Mrs. Birch.
So I do have a question. So we're not sure when this agreement will end up being ratified because it's going to impasse, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Impasse proceedings have been initiated. We have begun the process, and once that is completed, then we would be able to move forward with any additional changes.
Okay, so according to this language then, the date on which any salary increase would go into effect is something that will be negotiated?
Correct.
Okay, so it may not start on July 1st?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Nally?
Former teacher, I want to ask again, I want to make clear, because I know that many of the teachers after the funding were expecting a pay increase in July. So explain this to me again so that there will not be a pay increase in July unless it is negotiated. Even though that the budget has, we've been allocated the funds, but by law we can't give any increase until it's negotiated. Is that, I mean, I want teachers to be clear because they deserve their raise, and I want to be clear about that.
Correct. So in the budget, there has been, as Mr. Shaknovich said earlier, a placeholder, which is the equivalent of steps for Unit 1 employees. However, as the issue related to wages is a mandatory subject of bargaining, the board cannot unilaterally decide what they are going to give to employees. That is an item that has to be negotiated with TAC, which is the Identified Exclusive Bargaining Unit, which represents Unit 1 employees. So as of today, we have not reached an agreement which would establish the compensation increase that would be provided to employees. So through the impasse proceedings, we are hoping to resolve this issue, and at that time, based upon what the agreement is through the mediated settlement, any compensation increase will be provided after that time, based upon what is included in the mediated settlement.
And does that mean that this will be, I mean, let's say it's August or September, does that mean this is that the pay could be retroactive to July 1st or by this terms?
At this time, without the conclusion of the negotiations taking place, there is no identified date for which the effective time for the compensation increase would happen.
So it wouldn't automatically be retroactive?
No.
Thank you.
So if this extends into August, September, October, then teachers come back to work in August and they will not see their increase until the matter's resolved?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any more board questions. Are there any public comment on this item? Okay, all those in favor of the terms of employment for Unit 1? Motion passes 8-0-0. Item 4.04, terms of employment for Unit 2, employees for fiscal year 2017. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 2 employees for fiscal year 2017.
Little presentation?
Yes. The negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Association of Educational Leaders have also been unable to reach a tentative agreement for FY 2017. Accordingly, terms of employment have been established for Unit 2 employees, which recommend that the provisions of the July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2017 AEL negotiated agreement remain in effect except for the following changes will occur effective July 1, 2016. First, no step or other compensation increase will occur. No performance pay awards will be provided. Any compensation increases for Unit 2 employees will be implemented in accordance with the ratified agreement and or mediated settlement. Any increases in compensation will be provided to employees as soon as practicable in accordance with the Division of Human Resources payroll cutoff timelines. Secondly, the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pilot professional leave and telecommuting program will be extended for the 2016-17 school year and will expire on August 31st, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of the terms of employment, which will remain in effect until approval and ratification of any changes which would occur to the negotiated agreement.
Mrs. Summer.
So just to clarify, the same questions that Ms. Nally asked would also be in effect for AEL. So the step would not become automatic July 1st because the negotiation agreement is not complete, and depending on when it is reached, it will have to be negotiated as to whether it would be retroactive or not at that time. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. Item 4.05 is the ratification of amendments to the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1693 AFSCME for fiscal year 2017. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the ratification of amendments to the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1693 for fiscal year 2017.
Do I have a motion? We have a presentation?
Yes. I am pleased to announce that the negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1693, have reached a tentative agreement for FY 2017. In brief, the summary of changes are agreed upon by both parties include one-step increase for eligible employees, an additional annual leave day will be given to Unit 3 employees on Step 25. Thirdly, AFSCME and the board are committed to restructuring the AFSCME salary scale and will continue to explore alternative funding options and equitable pay structures. And finally, negotiations regarding healthcare-related topics will continue. Any agreement regarding these issues will become effective on January 1st, 2017. I would like to take a moment to thank Corey Blake, the Special Assistant to the Executive Director for AFSCME Council 67 and Chief Negotiator for Local 1693, and Roland Johnson, President of Local 1693, and the negotiating team for their dedicated effort during FY 2017 negotiations. Despite ongoing fiscal challenges, the teams worked collaboratively to reach an agreement which supports AFSCME members and their commitment to AACPS students, staff, and the community. On June 18, 2016, AFSCME ratified this agreement. As such, I respectfully request your approval and ratification of the noted summary of changes.
Mrs. Hummer.
And as we vote to, AFSCME has ratified, and as we vote to ratify today, and their step increase that we did receive funding for in this budget will go into effect July 1 for the AFSCME employees.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item?
I actually have a statement that I would like to read. Mr. Blake was unable to attend the meeting today, but has provided a statement that he wanted to share with the board, which have copies have been provided to you as well. Dr. Arlotto, and I do want to say for the record, Mr. Johnson is also here. He is feeling a little under the weather, so I will read the statement on their behalf. Dr. Arlotto, President Korbelak, and members of the board, I regret that I cannot join our colleagues today in submitting for your consideration and ratification of the tentative agreement between AFSCME and the Anne Arundel County Public Schools. For the past 14 years, I've had the pleasure to do just that and provide oral testimony not only to the good collaborative relationships that exist between this board and our union, but also to discuss my concerns on a broad range of issues, from fair share to outsourcing to the political discourse concerning public education. It is something I look forward to doing each year, but since someone is likely reading this on my behalf, I will keep my comments brief and will look forward to meeting with each of you individually in the coming months. I want to direct your attention to one of the seemingly more mundane aspects of the tentative agreement. We have agreed to meet in the coming months to explore restructuring the pay scale. While that may seem insignificant to some, it is vitally important to the employees we represent. We are thrilled to get a step increment this year. For the past 8 years, for various reasons, you have not been able to fully fund this aspect of our scale. However, your employees have earned the benchmarks necessary for advancement, both via performance ratings and years of service. Indeed, better than 97% of AFSCME represented employees achieved and meet standards or higher ratings on their annual performance review. This reflects their dedication and hard work and highlights their commitment to public service. However, because of circumstances beyond their control, including economic, political, and ideological considerations, these same employees have been unable to advance as their pay scale would indicate. Allow me to present some facts. 1,229, or 86% of the employees we represent, are lingering on the bottom half of the pay scale. A whopping 662 of them, or 46%, are on the lowest or second lowest pay step. And to make matters worse, they have remained on that lowest step for the last 8 years. This represents a complete and systematic failure of a pay scale both this board and this union have agreed to use. And while it would be easy to point fingers and lay blame, I am more interested in finding solutions. I have been assured that this is your position as well. We must work together to find an equitable system of advancing employees to higher levels of pay while considering the economic impact on the budget, recruitment, performance, and ultimately the taxpayer. I believe we can all agree that the dedicated, committed, and hardworking employees represented by this union are worth that. I look forward to this collaborative effort in the months ahead. In solidarity, Corey M. Blake, Special Assistant to the Executive Director, AFSCME Council 67.
I just want to thank you and Corey and your whole negotiating team for working with our negotiating team and being open-minded to explore maybe new avenues or new options for compensation. All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 4.06 is the terms of employment for Unit 4 employees for fiscal year 2017. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the terms of employment for Unit 4 employees for fiscal year 2017.
Do I have a motion? And we have a presentation.
Yes. The negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Secretaries and Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County have been unable to reach a tentative agreement for FY 2017. Accordingly, terms of employment have been established for Unit 4 employees, which recommend that all provisions of the negotiated agreement continue except for the following changes. No step or other compensation increases will occur. Any compensation increases for Unit 4 employees will be implemented in accordance with a ratified agreement and/or mediated settlement. Further, any increases in compensation will be provided to employees as soon as practicable in accordance with the Division of Human Resources payroll cutoff timelines. Secondly, the Annapolis High School Memorandum of Understanding will be extended for the 2016-2017 school year and will expire on June 30th, 2017. The current negotiated agreement expires on June 30th, 2016, and I respectfully request your approval of the terms of employment to take effect on July 1st, 2016, which will remain in effect until a successor agreement has been ratified. Thank you.
Mrs. Hummer.
Again, there will not be an automatic step increase July 1. It will be open to negotiation as to whether, when the deal is ratified and the agreement is ratified, as to whether it would be retroactive pay or not. That would be negotiated.
Yes.
Correct? Thank you.
Mrs. Nally.
I echo my sentiments. I'm concerned that as of July 1st, that these employees are not going to receive pay increases of the units we've discussed. And I encourage you, your team, and the teams from their bargaining units really work hard for the employees to settle this matter as soon as possible. I think employees deserve their raises.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 4.07, terms of employment for Unit 5 and 6 employees for fiscal year 2017. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of terms of employment for Unit 5 and Unit 6 employees for fiscal year 2017.
So moved.
Presentation.
Yes. Terms of employment have been established for AACPS non-represented Unit 5 and Unit 6 employees for FY 2017. The following is a summary of recommended changes. First, grant one step to all eligible Unit 5A through E employees effective July 1, 2016. Second, grant a compensation increase to all Unit 5F and Unit 6 employees, the amount of which will be determined upon completed negotiations with other employee bargaining units. Third, no performance pay will be awarded. And fourth, an increase will occur for prescription co-payments, which will become effective January 1st, 2017. Additional information regarding new rates will be found or available on the AACPS website. I respectfully request your approval of the terms of employment for FY17 for Units 5 and 6.
Mrs. Birch?
Yes, can you explain to me who Unit 5A through E employees are?
Yes, many of the Unit 5 employees are in this building. They would work in our technology office. Many work as support staff for various offices, and they are not considered to be senior level management employees.
Thank you.
So these employees still have a step scale even though they're not bargaining unit employees?
Correct. And as a matter of information, these employees have not received a step for the past 7 years, which is similar to what has even happened with AFSCME as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, for all your hard work. Thanks. Item 5.01 are administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 5.02 and 5.03 are second readings on policies. The first is professional improvement policy GBM employees, and this is an information item only. There were no public comments at all on the website for this one.
That's correct. No public comments.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about this policy, second reading? Any public comment? Okay, so one more time, it'll be back July?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other policy, 5.03, is student behavior interventions, exclusion, seclusion, and physical restraint policy JK, also a second reading with no public comments, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mrs. Birch has a question.
Now, I may have asked this last time, but did you get a lot of input from the special education community before you put this together? Because I'm just really surprised there was no public comment on this policy.
Okay, so we did get input from the special education community and was shared with them, and I'm just trying to recall in the process when that occurred, but maybe part of the reason is because much of this is scripted by Comar.
Okay.
So they're pretty familiar with it, and much of it is,
So it's nothing shocking, it's nothing new, it's...
Correct. It's
okay.
all driven by Comar, so they're pretty familiar with that already. And there were some changes at first reading based on one parent from special education between the policy committee meeting and first reading. She's involved in CCAC and gave us some really good recommendations. So we did tweak it quite a bit before the first reading based on her input.
Okay. It's just really surprising on an issue like this to not get more public input. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.04 is an information to action item on the Carrie Whedon Pre-K Kindergarten Ed Spec schematic design. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Carrie Whedon Early Education Center educational specification and schematic design.
Do I have any questions from the board? Mrs. Nally?
What percent of students in that area would benefit who are below poverty level and who would benefit from an early childhood center? What percent?
So as you know, the brief history is that was a school serving the southern community for many years. It closed some 17, 20 years ago. And we are recommending to the board that we reopen it as an early education center, much like Ferndale, if you will, and Westmead. And the idea would be a pre-K center. We would open that to 20 students. It would be an all-day pre-K center for each of those youngsters, totaling a pre-K for up to 80 students. The current figures that we have are that of the students that are in the South County cluster, about 49% of them come to us in kindergarten without having had any formal pre-K. So that would be public or private, and the ones that we're able to determine. So it's about 49% are coming to us without any formal education prior to kindergarten. And that's one of the significant reasons that we believe it's an appropriate time and place, location to open an early education center for our students that are certainly in need. It is also known that in several parts of our county, the South County cluster included, are some significant pockets of poverty where our families have not been able to access because of the lack of public pre-K, but also their inability to pay for private pre-K. And so that's, again, one of the reasons that we're looking to move forward with this building into the future.
I've appreciated with my service in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, I've appreciated what has happened at Carrie Whedon over the years since the early 90s. But our system has made just significant advances with our hands-on at Arlington Echo, in our classrooms, and explain to me, I think, the difference maybe now, because there are a lot of people who've been led to believe that this is not duplicated. The kind of services provided are not really duplicated in our classrooms and at Arlington Echo, and I just have observed differently. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, I believe so in answering your question, Ms. Nally, in that when the Carrie Whedon Science Foundation began their work as a nonprofit and began to invite our students, public as well as private students and families into that, from that community and around the county into to experience their hands-on science, some of that project-based learning. At the time in 1999 when they began, it was a time where we weren't doing that kind of work in our classrooms. We have grown by leaps and bounds, particularly under the leadership of Michelle Batten and Kathy Kubik and Mary Talar and Dr. Maureen McMahon. We have really expanded those hands-on project-based learning, science and environmental work. And as you well know, this board went on a retreat with the Chesapeake Science Foundation. We spent a day talking with students, talking with teachers, looking at the programs, and we have a very extensive pre-K to 12 environmental science program. But it's not just environmental science, it's hands-on science as well that Carrie Whedon has been able to provide students. We've enjoyed our partnership with them. We have no desire to cease that group from operating. We hope that they continue, and then we can continue our partnership with them. We're just asking that now we're going to take that building back. As you know, they're on a year-to-year lease. We've talked about that with this board over the last several years. We've gone to a year-to-year lease, knowing that we wanted at some point to bring that building back into our fold as a school, and that's sort of where we are. So we certainly have, we deliver much more in terms of that rigor in our classrooms on a day-to-day basis than than we have over the years, now more so than ever. And so we don't feel like we're losing anything. We certainly don't want to negatively impact Carrie Whedon and the group. That's a very dedicated group to the work that they're doing with children. Again, we've enjoyed that partnership, but it's now time that we're going to take that building back, and we hope to, if they're willing to work with us, hope to find them space somewhere else so they can continue that work. But we're very, very excited about bringing early childhood education to the Southern Cluster.
Thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
So my question is about the pre-K again. The existing pre-K in South County is all half-day?
Correct. There are 2 pre-K centers in South County region, and they are at Lothian Elementary School and at Shadyside Elementary School, and they're half-day programs.
Which is a problem for a lot of parents, especially low-income parents who need pre-K, because a half-day pre-K is not useful to a lot of people who need a whole day for their schedule because of their work schedule and things like this. And what you're proposing would also have before and after care, right?
Correct. As we've been developing this, not only the ed specs and the schematic design that's in front of you, and our team's been down there, and this group in front of you has done phenomenal work throughout the county, but in particular on this project as we've looked to build access to early learning for our students, and certainly pre-K. In that we've worked with Parks and Rec, and they're willing to bring in their programs for before and after care. We'll be able to provide meals to the students because it will be all day. We'll be able to provide transportation, so students throughout that region will be able to get there, and parents won't have to rely on their own transportation to get some of these private areas. It's now something that we'll be able to provide. It's an exciting opportunity, we believe, for our students and families in the South County region.
And it's much more cost effective for us to do it all in one place than to have one full day pre-K at this school and one full day pre-K at this school, to do it all in one place with one team doing only pre-K.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sasso.
Suitable for what AACPS would like to do. At the same time, we are looking at Carrie Whedon, that basically, they have known from what I understand, I'm new to the board for 2 years, to be able to find a location, and they have not been able to find a location. Would it be suitable if we asked them if they could make a donation of everything that they have to the Anne Arundel County public system, of everything that they have over there, so that we can incorporate it in what we already have in our school system?
I certainly I appreciate the comment, Ms. Sasso. I certainly can't speak for the Carrie Whedon Foundation. They have their own board that directs their work, and has since their inception in 1999. I don't know what they're willing to do. We certainly are glad to continue to work with them as we have since 1999, and as they now begin to look for space into the future to continue their programs. We're glad to work with them in doing that, but I certainly would not take this opportunity to try and speak on behalf of their board.
Mrs. Pickard.
Yeah, so actually getting back to the actual ed specs, since you're sitting here, we might as well ask our questions, right? In taking the time to read through it, I really think it's cool the way that we're able to use this space. Many of the classrooms can be used in a multi-purpose function, correct? So there's a cultural arts classroom that can also serve as the cafeteria, gym, because of the way those educational aspects will, right?
Correct. Alex Shackno, Chief Operating Officer, and really building upon Ms. Burgess' comments that were economics driven. What we've learned at both Ferndale and at Westmead is that putting all the pre-K together and putting a focus, the whole building's focus, is solely on pre-K. The principal's attention is not divided between pre-K and third grade and fifth grade. A professional development provided to that instructional team is solely focused on pre-K. The nutritional guidelines that Food Nutrition will put in place to service the youngsters will be focused on that age bracket. It really is a game changer to try to bring all those synergies and a very purposeful, very focused attention on just a very thin sliced age bracket, but we think that that really has a tremendous amount of leverage to it, and will have those youngsters much better prepared. So the building is really the vessel in which instruction takes place. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the instructional leaders of that building. I mean, this is the vessel, but it's really the people, and it's going to be a very special place. You cannot, for members of the public who have never been to Ferndale or never been to Westmead, it is an amazing, almost life-changing place to spend a day. And we hope to replicate the vast success and wildly popular programs that we have at Ferndale and at Westmead, but now bring that to the southern area of our county.
Well, I think it's extremely exciting, and I'm a huge proponent of pre-K, and I know that AACPS will do an amazing job rolling this out. And our southern cluster, we've seen and tremendous growth in poverty rates there, both there and southern cluster and up in the Glen Burnie area. So I feel like a full day pre-K for 80 students is just going to be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I look forward to advocating on behalf of the expansion.
Ms. Sasso.
Question for Dr. Arlotto, and this is in reference to the Carrie Whedon and their agreement or alliance with us. And it has to do, it is my understanding that the facility is part of the AACPS building. It is my understanding also that AACPS has paid for the custodian and the utilities of that building. But at the same time, Carrie Wyndham is a nonprofit that basically charges our AACP students to be able to enter the building and see the facilities.
So correct on all of those counts, Ms. Sasso. It is a building that we've had as part of our stable of buildings, part of our inventory for many years. We do, through the memorandum of understanding that we've had with them over the years, that the building has been leased to that group. And has been traditional in other leases, similar leases, it's for $1 a year. We do have custodians from some of our schools that are sent to the building several times a week to do some basic work and cleaning. And we do pay for the utilities to maintain the heat and air conditioning to maintain the utilities in that building. So the answer is yes to all 4 of your questions.
So really their existence of their basics basically has been paid by AACPS.
You could put it that way. And then the last piece was, and are they charging our students? Yes, there is a charge for each student that comes down on a field trip with their school, takes care of, schedules a bus that takes them there for their experience at Carrie Whedon, and that hands-on experience. And yes, each of the students or the school system, we are charged for those students to participate. Those students that are unable to pay, I know that Carrie Whedon has some funds set aside, so they help pay and subsidize the cost for students that are unable to pay. And I think it is a $7 charge. I believe it's a $7 charge per student to participate in that when they go on that field trip. But I do know that Carrie Whedon does provide some funds for students that are unable to pay.
Okay, and it is my understanding we have sort of this type of relationship with 2 other nonprofits in this area, one of them being the Maryland Arts and the other one. And do they charge our students?
No, we have similar memorandums of understanding with Maryland Hall as well as the Chesapeake Arts Center. And the short answer is no. Those programs are integral to our overall arts programs. In fact, for example, the PVA at Bates Middle School was placed at Bates Middle School because of our access to that building, and the PVA students at Bates come and go from that building. They're not charged to use that building and those facilities, no.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hummer.
Some of these ed specs, some of the things, the upgrades or improvements to the building, no matter what this building was used for, they would still need to be done, correct? For instance, the roof needs to be replaced no matter what would be in this building.
Correct.
So that's $1 million roughly to replace the roof. So those are funds that would need to be expended to bring this building up to where it needs to be, no matter
what the building is used for?
Yes, ma'am. No matter what it's used for or who the owner of the building is, just like any other building, as it ages and becomes more antiquated, certain components of the building, such as a roof, that typically have a useful life of only 20, maybe 25 years or a little bit more than that, cyclically do have to be replaced. So there are absolutely parts of that building that would require some attention under any variety of scenarios.
Thank you.
Mrs. Nally?
I think my only disappointment is that I'll be off the board when this opens, but I'll be there for the opening. I agree. I want to echo and say that Ferndale and Westmead, the first time I went into Ferndale after, and there had been some consternation on the part of some of the community, and I was involved, we were all involved in that, and the first time I toured Ferndale and also met with the administration, I wanted to go back to being a principal again, and I wanted to go to Ferndale. And I loved the focus. It was just wonderful. I really can't say. And I would encourage, my question is that as this project moves forward, I would encourage you and your staff to include some PTA folks and gather them to see the excitement and go and tour Ferndale and go and look at what is going on at Westmead. Go and see what is in store for them. And I think it'll sell itself. Honestly, I do. But I think that the community has not been, maybe yet, aren't to that point to where they would be realizing truly what a gain this is going to be for their community.
I just had a question. This funding that we requested, we received partial funding, correct, for this fiscal year from the County Council. So when would the anticipated opening date be?
Certainly. So we had requested a full $1.6 million appropriation authority for this project. An amendment was introduced through the various stages of the budget adoption process that altered that funding stream from receiving all $1.6 million in FY17, the year that's before us, to actually spread that out over 2 years, with the first $600,000 coming to the Board of Education in this July as part of the FY17 budget. The remaining $1 million would be allocated to the Board of Education in FY17. Using that funding model, we would be looking to open the school to students in August of 2018 would be the goal.
So we'll do what we can with the $600,000 this fiscal year, and then we'll continue the project and wrap it up in time to open the school.
Yes, ma'am. Much to Ms. Hummer's point, there are many different components of the building that need to be addressed, and we would work with our staff and with the code authorities and with the building occupants to be able to undertake as many of them that can be safely and appropriately undertaken over the course of this upcoming fiscal year, and the remaining elements would be undertaken once the building is empty in FY18.
Okay. I don't have any other board comments. Is there any public comment on this item?
Pam Bukowski, speech and language pathologist at Southern High and Southern Middle. From the educational, instructional long-range impact, this is big. This is huge for, our families in the South County area. We have so many kids coming into kindergarten who, because they haven't had any prior experience, are already behind. And kindergarten isn't a time to come in without any kind of experiences because you've already begun to move up. And so they play the catch-up game all the way through. When they get to the middle school, they're still catching up, and they get to the high school and they're still catching up. And our families down there are wonderful families, and they support us as educators, but many of them, because they never really looked at education as something to get excited about, to enjoy. They know that education is a means to a successful future, but there's not that sense of real anticipation and enthusiasm because they didn't have it, and now their kids don't really have that either. But when you get these little kids who soak up everything like a sponge and give them this start, the sky's the limit for them. It just, it goes on and on. This is these are communities, no sidewalks. I mean, Southern Middle has no walkers because we're on Route 2. And like even the kids who used to live across the street had to take the bus because we don't have any crossing guards either, you know. So I was assigned to Shadyside one year. Sometimes it took me 25 minutes to get from Southern High to Shadyside. So things are really spread out. I live here in Annapolis. I can walk to the library. I can walk to CVS. I can walk to Giant if I want. My colleagues who teach down there talk about trying to arrange, you know, all those trips on their way between school and home. And I know the families, you know, don't have the resources that we here, at least in this cluster, have. So I am thrilled to see that something like this, you know, is occurring. I've seen the program at Shadyside, an open school, and you know, they've done a phenomenal job. And when Lothian shared space with us, I also had the advantage of seeing that. So having, you know, being able to take advantage of a center like Carrie Whedon and, you know, just have all these opportunities for these kids, and then, you know, by extension to their families, is exciting. Shadyside is actually the only non-PTA school down there, but they have a very vibrant PTO, as the Southern High. All the others are PTA schools, so we're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 5.05 is the Millersville Administrative Facility BGE deed of easement. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Millersville Administrative Facility BGE deed of easement.
Mrs. Hummer.
I just have a question. We have easements like this and we receive funds. Where do those funds go? Budget-wise, where do we put that money?
It's revenue unanticipated into the budget, so typically it would go into like a capital outlay account. So it goes into the operating budget as unanticipated revenue. It's unbudgeted for.
And so then that could be just extra funds that are available for different projects or something?
Well,
that
we have
comes
to
up?
get, we aggregate those, and we have to go to the county council to get appropriation authority. It goes before the board. Typically, we'll roll something like this. We'll roll together as part of our second quarter transfer. The superintendent will bring to this board a recommendation on what categories or where the revenue is to be placed and how it is to be utilized. Upon adoption of that second or fourth quarter transfer, we then go to the county council to get the requisite legal authority to expend those monies. So we receive these. They'll be held in reserve essentially as part of an undesignated fund balance until such time that this board and a county council takes their action.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
First, I think it's funny that someone discovered that $3,150 was a fair and reasonable offer for that. I don't know how you come to that conclusion, but my question is actually between this and the next one, because I don't know. What is the difference, or how do you decide whether you're going to do an easement or a right-of-way? And is the difference whether you pay for it? Because we're doing an easement here and a right-of-way on the next one. And this was my big question. Anybody know?
So essentially, the easement is providing them a long-term. It's a long-term arrangement for them to install their utility, in this case underground, and it's a long-term encumbrance on the property, and they're compensating us for that. The right-of-way is more of an accessibility authorization. In the case of the BG&E right-of-way agreement, it would be to install an interrupter, which is actually above ground. It will be installed on a pole. It's a piece of gear that BG&E utilizes to increase the reliability of it. So it does not have the impact, the long-term impact in terms of the utilization of our property. We have made BG&E aware that, for example, our old mill complex is part of our 6-year plan, and that they realize that depending on the outcome of the study and where our capital budget takes us, it would certainly potentially have an impact on this. But BG&E has determined that that increasing the reliability of their and the robustness of their network in that Old Mill area is important enough that they still want to take this action.
So then the right-of-way we could take away when we do the Old Mill plan.
Right. It does not have as much permanency.
Okay.
The easement we would have to reacquire.
Okay.
Or negotiate to essentially reacquire.
And if they didn't want to sell it to us, they wouldn't have to.
That could become more complex, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that does help. Thank you. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one quick question. I'm looking in, what is this, Section 12, noting that the work is going to occur 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And I'm sure this has been asked, but just a assurance here, elementary school students are curious, and underlying transmissions look like fun things to play with. I'm just verifying that walkers who are, walking by, students at recess, etc., no one's impacted.
So there's two comments. One, this actually is at our administrative facility that houses our transportation division, so there are no students at this facility. And then it's located along Millersville Road. We don't have any walkers. Even to Millersville Elementary School, that's a bit further down the way, we don't have any youngsters that are passing this complex. That all being said, there are a tremendous amount of safety precautions that are put into any trenching operation. So BG&E is a very professionalized operation with a lot of safety protocols in place, both of their own plus general industry accepted practices. So things like demarcation and supervision and fencing and shoring, et cetera, will be implemented whether this occurred at a school or not at a school. Fortunately, it is not at a school in this instance.
And my apologies, I was doing the scan. I was thinking Millersville Elementary School, so that's why I asked. So thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Item 5.06 is the Old Mill Complex BGE right-of-way agreement. This is an information and to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information?
Old Mill Complex BGE right-of-way agreement.
Mrs. Sasso.
Why, if we might need it in the future, why are we allowing them to do it overhead and we are not requiring it for it to be buried underground?
Well, the interrupter, again, Al Checkno, Chief Operating Officer. So the interrupter, it's a piece of equipment that is above ground, so it's not an underground transmission line. It is something that senses a fault within the electric grid and then automatically allows some adjustments. So instead of us having a phase outage or a loss of power and having to dispatch a utility crew out there, this piece of gear, this piece of machinery will first try to fix that fault and allow the continuation of electric service. So so this piece of equipment is an above ground device that's either pole mounted or cabinet mounted. It's not like an underground line. All of that being said, we again have clearly communicated to BG&E that we do, hopefully sooner rather than later, have some construction activities that will be occurring out there. At that time, part of the design, the redesign of the Old Mill Complex will also include all of the utilities, including the electric. And so the functionality that both us and BG&E receive through the installation of the interrupter will hopefully be incorporated into whatever that future final design will be of the Old Mill Complex when that day comes as well.
But if anything of these needs to be removed or relocated, who's paying for it?
BG&E. They pay for the installation, they pay for the care and maintenance, and they pay for the removal.
But I didn't see that in the agreement, that in any future.
This is Larry Albert, Supervisor of Planning, Design, and Construction. On the very end of the right-of-way agreement, the last sentence is in the event, there's a whole part about an alternate location. So the grantee agrees to relocate the interrupter or any of the facilities at the grantee's expense, which is BGE's expense. So that is included at the end of the line.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. The next item on the agenda are consent items, award of contracts. Do I have a motion to bundle items 6.01 through 6.15 and move them from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education award contracts as listed on today's agenda, labeled 6.01 through 6.15 inclusive.
Mrs. Summer.
What's the lifespan of an HVAC system? How often do we replace them in the schools?
So different components of the system have a different life expectancy, as you might well imagine, but it is not atypical to have a lifespan for the core elements of it that would be on the order of about 25 years or so.
Okay. So we're kind of systematically, we have a schedule of our schools, just we're working through about every 20,
right. So,
25 years?
Each piece of equipment, be it a pump or a boiler or an air handler, the manufacturers of those equipment have an expected life cycle that's a combination of both age and then runtime, the amount of utilization or usage. And so our facilities folks begin with that. So we know what the expected life or longevity is of an individualized piece of equipment. But then beyond that, they're assessing it routinely to see if a piece of equipment is possibly suffering sort of premature or earlier failure, and or, which is typically our case, through good preventive maintenance and through good maintenance activities, we're actually able to extend the useful life of that beyond what the manufacturer occurs. And that's really speaks to the importance of doing proper maintenance and operations activities, because it takes that taxpayer's investment that maybe is 25 years, and if we can stretch it out to 30 and defer that expense a little bit better, that's even more important, especially in light of the deferred backlog that we have. So stretching out the life of our assets as much as possible is a prudent and judicious use of taxpayer funds.
Definitely. Thank you.
I have one public comment on item 6.14, Lisa Van Buskirk.
Thank you, Lisa Van Buskirk, Rest Start School Later. I have a couple of questions that I received on my phone, so I'll reference that. They're from Ms. O'Keefe. After she met with members of the AACPS transportation staff, Dr. Arlato and Ms. Sasso, she's been looking at her data for the buses, and so she has a couple of questions. And to answer your question, Ms. Sasso, sorry Claudia couldn't be here, she's at work, and since this was a daytime meeting, she couldn't come. She was encouraged that you helped set the meeting up, but a little disappointed, perhaps, I don't want to put words in her mouth, about the state of the transportation software. And so I believe perhaps there is a disconnect between the board's intent to start school later and the staff's intent to start school later. That perhaps is where the disconnect may be, in her opinion. And I know that Dr. Arlato conveyed to her, I believe, that the BOE must specifically direct ACPS to start school later. Anyway, so the question specifically, oops, oh goodness, now I touched something. I have to go back. Regarding the transportation contract, you have bus 37 going to Forbush, Hunt Valley, but based on the published bus schedules, bus 37 picks up at Southern High School, Southern Middle School, and Tracy's Elementary School, and Tracy starts at 9:15. Hunt Valley is over an hour away from these schools, and the Forbush school day starts at 9 to 3. But if they mean bus 237 and not 37, then the last drop off from Arundel Mill for an 8 a.m. start might be enough time to get to Hunt Valley for 9 a.m. So same works for most of the other bus numbers on their spreadsheet. It appears they're missing the first digit. So what bus numbers are being referenced in the contract is the question. And then are these part of the buses going to non-private placement that would be affected by ordering 10 more buses for a start time slide?
I guess we'll have to check that for you.
Okay, but if you're going to approve a contract for those entities, perhaps that'd be something you want to know. Thank you.
Alan Sheknev, Chief Operating Officer for the district again. It's a very simple answer. So this is a route number, not a bus number.
Okay. And I don't know what.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
She says I checked the bus routes, and so I think she's referencing the bus routes.
All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. I just have one announcement. The next Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, July 13th, here in the boardroom at 10 a.m. Mrs. Nally.
I'd like to move that we go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
All those in favor? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.